This is Brett Fear interviewing Harvey Luna in the Norwich Center for Digital Solutions in the Fondren Library on SMU's campus in Dallas, Texas. On today is
The 31st.
March 31st, 2022. So, how are you doing today, Harvey?
I'm pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us today and tell us your story. So,
Yeah.
let's
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's start off. Kind of establish your connection to SMU. When did you go to school here? When did you graduate? What degree did you graduate with? And then, kind of since then, what has been your connection?
Sure. Yeah. So I came to SMU in fall of 2010 and graduated in May of 2014. That's for my undergrad, and I graduated with political science and also economics majors. And yeah, I've been here in Dallas, born and raised here. Also hope to retire here. So I just love the city and always loved SMU. So when I got the acceptance letter that I got in, I was ecstatic. And so yeah, happy to still be around. And now I currently work for the university doing education research at the Center on Research and Evaluation under the Simmons School of Education.
Thank you. And then for Center of Research and Evaluation, so it's like CORE?
Yeah, that's the acronym.
Yes, from the acronym, awesome, because I thought I remember seeing that.
Yes.
All right, awesome. So let's kind of take us back to the beginning. So when were you born, where were you born, and just kind of tell us a little bit about your family growing up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was born back in 1991. Yeah, here in Dallas, Texas, over at Parkland Hospital. And yeah, I grew up in Southeast Dallas. Family, parents are both from Mexico, and they came here undocumented, left the life behind that they grew up in Mexico, and was very fortunate enough to grow up here in the United States. My mother is now a United States citizen, and my father is a green card holder, and so now they're luckily documented. But yeah, that's a legacy that my family has, and very fortunate to be a first-generation Latino here in the United States for my family.
Awesome. And do you have any siblings?
I do. I'm the oldest of, 5? Sometimes I lose count. Yeah, I'm currently 30, and the youngest is 10. And so there's like a 20-year difference. Sometimes when I pick him up from school, my little brother, they think I'm the father. I'm like, no, it's just like my little brother.
All right. Awesome. And so can you kind of tell me what a normal day looked like for you as a child? Kind of going back to elementary and middle school, what would a normal day look like for you?
Yeah, a normal day, I guess in middle school, high school, or just kind of childhood. I would say it kind of felt like I was like almost like a parent, where I'm like, having to help raise the kids a little bit, whether that's cooking or helping with homework. And so always kind of having that kind of brotherly or kind of parental figure for my younger siblings growing up. But I still had a childhood. I, loved to play basketball in the backyard or even wrestling with my brothers. We've probably gotten in trouble many times because we probably did some of those stunts and ended up hurting each other. But it was pretty, I guess, typical childhood.
Yeah. And sort of what sort of role did religion and culture play in your household when you were growing up?
Oh, right. Yes. Well, my mom is particularly very religious and grew up Baptist. And so each Sunday we would go to church, and it was a 3-hour service. And some of those services for being a kid felt like, oh my gosh, like, can't I just be outside and play or something? But yeah, it was religion was very important in the household. It did become a point of contention later in high school when my mom figured out that I was gay, and me and her got into a lot of arguments, discussions around that. and how religion felt like a barrier between the relationship between my mother at the time. But now we're in good terms. But yeah, that's kind of how I grew up in the family. My father wasn't as religious, and so it was kind of almost as if we grew up with this value system in the household. But once we became adults, we were able to make choices about our faith moving forward.
Yeah, and so can you tell me a little bit about what your friend group looked like growing up? Did you have any other Latino friends, or tell me a little bit more about that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, being in Dallas ISD, we had several friends and acquaintances who were Latino, and it was great growing up with friends, with colleagues who looked like me. I felt like we had a shared experience growing up. I was fortunate enough to go into different types of education while in Dallas. I started off in just a general public school, and then moved into a Vanguard school, then moved over to a Montessori school, and then ended up doing a magnet school for high school. And so I got different forms of education styles growing up, and I think I benefited a lot from that, just the different teaching styles, and also just having a different group of cohort of different backgrounds, whether it's Latino, Black, white, or Asian. I felt like I had a pretty good educational experience growing up, and then did private school here at SMU for college.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can definitely speak to that experience. I went to high school in Garland.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a majority Hispanic school, and it's very diverse. And I think I really kind of, looking back on it, I don't think I really appreciated it at the time, just how lucky I was to have that experience with people of diverse backgrounds. It really is something that you can't replace with anything else.
Oh yeah, for sure. Did you ever try any of the food growing up? Imagine when you have friends or of different cultures, you get to try, I guess, some of the different foods.
Yeah, like my best friend, his mother is from Guatemala, and so she always makes Guatemalan food whenever I was over there, and she always sent me home with food. It was like, thank you so much.
Oh,
you
that's
have no
awesome.
idea how much I appreciate this.
Yes.
Awesome. And so you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how would you describe the acceptance of the LGBTQ plus community growing up? Not just in your family, but outside in your friend group and in school as well.
So my parents are in the floral and wedding event business, and by virtue of them being in that industry, there's a lot of professionals that they worked with that identified as part of the LGBTQ community. And even one of our family friends was, openly gay. And so I felt that it was very much accepted, at least outside of the immediate family, but not so much within my own family unit. So I kind of felt like kind of a mixed feelings there, that it was okay to be gay if you're not part of this family, but if you're going to be part of this family, you can't be that. And so, in a sense, I felt like there was broader acceptance of it, but I knew at some point I needed to have that kind of conversation with my parents to create a safer space for just me to be me. And it's something that I struggled with for a very long time. I remember even in first grade or second grade, my first crush being a guy, and while everyone was having crushes on girls, I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I won't say anything. I'll just pretend to have a crush on a girl. And then just until high school, so many years later, I realized, yeah, this is who I am. And, need to make sure, my family seems to accept our family friend. I'm sure they'll accept me. And so that's kind of where that kind of dynamic, how that dynamic played out growing up. Because I knew once I felt confident enough to come out, I feel like eventually my parents would be accepting. But in the broader context of what I was seeing um, in society from very like early on, like from Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or even some of the shows growing up, like Will and Grace. Like there was a sense that there was some level of acceptance, but not quite full acceptance just yet, in terms of having equal rights for our LGBT community. And I knew, that's something that I, especially after coming out, was very passionate about. And a lot of the on-campus activism that I did was around LGBTQ initiatives. And so that's kind of where I channeled all that energy, and still continue to do that to this day. I'm one of the acting leaders for our SMU Pride Alumni Board, and right now we're in kind of a reboot stage where we're recruiting a lot of different individuals. Currently, we have about 15 members on the board, which is a great showing, and we have identified about 17 other individuals who are about to graduate, who have an interest in joining the board. Of course, the broader alumni network is a lot larger, but I really want to make sure that we have an alumni presence, so that way we can continue to support the students here at SMU who are currently working on initiatives that are important for this community.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so, kind of, you talked about how you had your first crush at first and second grade, and so you kind of knew early on that you were gay, and but didn't come out until high school. So
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that period of time in between when you knew you were gay and when you came out, and sort of how you tried to, maybe in a sense, hide it, or what were some of the things that you had to be aware of in order to kind of navigate social life with your family during that time?
Yeah. Well, I kind of just paid attention to first I realized like I can't, or I felt insecure about being honest, especially because there's, at that age, you get a lot of teasing. And it's like, oh, you're gay, you like boys, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't want that kind of treatment. And so I just kept it in, and as a way to divert attention from myself, I would pretend to because in like grade school, there's like, oh, we all have this crush on this one girl or whatever, and I'll pretend to be like, yeah, she's so beautiful, and kind of fly under the radar in that sense. But over time, that has an effect on having, I guess, kind of secure relationships with different people, where you would have more. It's perceived that having relationships with girls would be like, okay, that's normal, but having to navigate like having even friendships with guys could be perceived like, oh, Harvey might be gay or something. And so I constantly avoided kind of those types of relationships where it would be like a question about my sexuality. And so that was kind of interesting, a sign from my mom that she picked up. She's like, why are you only hanging around with girls and not the guys? Thinking like, oh, like I'm very good at hiding it. But my mom, like when talking with her, she picked up on these little things over time. And I think a parent knows, their own kids. But it really took quite a while for me to kind of build up the confidence to have that conversation with my parents, but primarily my mom. She was the one that was hardest to convince that everything's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Awesome. And so, as a kid, what were some dreams you held as a child? Like, I guess that's another way of saying, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, well, there was several things that I wanted to be. First one was a commercial airline pilot. I just loved planes. And then being part here in Dallas, like Dallas Love Field is like right around the corner. And then also DFW International, like the fourth largest airport, or the fourth busiest airport in the country. And so I thought, like, well, aviation is kind of cool. And just kind of think about wanting to be a pilot and just kind of, being able to see the world, seeing a lot of like different countries, their cultures, was something of interest for me. Even like language acquisition, growing up in a household where I spoke both English and Spanish, was something that I very much loved, and helped me have conversations with different groups of people in their native language to understand them better, because sometimes things get lost in translation. And one of the things I'm doing now is learning Japanese, and because I just love Japan. I've traveled there recently, a couple years back, and it's a place that I kind of want to keep going back. It's kind of one of those places where I have to visit multiple times in my lifetime. And so if I'm going to be doing that, might as well learn the language to try to communicate with locals there. But yeah, that's kind of thing that I like about language, is connecting with people. You mentioned, what was the other part of the question?
I think it was what were some dreams you had as a child?
Right.
So you mentioned.
So that was like, so one of the dreams was being an airline pilot. Mm-hmm. Other one is being an architect. Like I would build these different building models that I would construct. And I think this was probably an artifact of going through 9/11 and remembering at the time in fourth grade being pulled, in like by all the teachers, like something's happening in New York City. And we were watching the news. By that time, the plane had crashed into the first building. And then as we were watching, we saw the second plane hit the other building. And from then on, the teachers like shut down the TV. They realized what was going on. And so it had a big effect on me. And it was the first sense, growing up, I felt, the having the LGBTQ identity was something that, some of the people may have a struggle with. But 9/11 felt like something that there was a lot more common that our country was facing in terms of trauma. And that stuck with me. And I think that's why I wanted to also be an architect, because seeing those towers fall, I wanted to construct something, rebuild something. And as a kid, I would, start off making, like models like this big, up to making models that stood like 8 to 10 feet tall. Like into high school, like once I knew like how to like piece like certain things together. And that was pretty fun, But yeah, those were some of the things that I wanted to do. But then over time, when I went into high school, I had a very good economics professor that just opened up the world to me. And that, the reason why that was interesting to me was because I grew up in a low-income family, and understanding some of those micro kind of situations of not having enough income, thinking about it in a more macro sense, like how common is this, for families, for people. And that's why I decided to pursue economics and political science at SMU, because I felt like there was just a lot of socioeconomic political issues that were informing policy. And part of that also tied into policies that prohibited LGBTQ people from having full rights. And so it was just kind of an awakening of these larger systems at play, and made me want to learn more about it and see what I can do to affect change in my own sphere of influence.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it kind of sounds like in all the interests you've had, you've really, taken something that was very personal to you and tried to, portray it out into something larger than yourself. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that's awesome. And I just say it made me really smile when you said you wanted to be a pilot, because that was a dream of mine too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and kind of still is.
Oh.
I'm a big plane nut myself.
Oh, nice,
so
nice.
so whenever I'm on the plane, I got to sit on the wing. I need to see the flaps and the air brakes
Oh,
and the
yes.
thrust reverser go out. Like,
Yes,
like,
yes.
Why do you think it's so cool? It just is. You don't
Right.
understand.
Yeah. What got you interested in that?
It's very cliche, but Top Gun, it was and still is my favorite movie of all
Interesting.
time.
Yes, yes.
Well,
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
you must be excited for the remake.
oh, very excited. Way too excited.
Yeah. Nice.
Awesome, but I digress.
Oh, no, that's good. I love hearing this kind of stuff.
Awesome. And so, kind of transitioning from high school to SMU, what was SMU's reputation? How did you and your family perceive SMU
Oh, yeah.
at the time?
Yeah, so me and my family pursued SMU as kind of like the top tier university within Dallas. And so that's kind of, we set our eyes on that. Because one, I wanted to be close here to home. I wasn't, looking forward to going to a different city or different state or even country at the time to, pursue my education. And so I thought well, I'll get my act together to get pretty good scores, K to 12, and then hopefully that will launch me into getting accepted into SMU. Because one, I get to stay close here to family, plus also have a pretty good education. Also, the ratio to teacher to students was something that I saw very valuable, because I wanted to make sure I went to a school where I get to have kind of those mentorship type relationships with professors, because I think that's one of the value adds that I saw as a benefit growing up, even from middle school to high school, just coming in early in the morning before classes start, and then meeting with my teachers, especially on some homework that I wasn't sure on. They always made themselves available, and I found those to be the most enriching educational opportunities outside of the classroom. And so I wanted to pursue something similar coming to SMU. And so it was kind of just a whole package of things. The thing that really was scary was the price tag for SMU, coming from a low-income family. But we had a great counselor in high school who, assured us there's money. We just have to find it. And so we applied to different grants, got a need-based grant from SMU, was able to be part of it with some loans. But at the end of the day, because of the financial aid package that was put together by SMU, it made it a lot more reasonable to go to SMU. And so that's kind of how I ended up here and how the stars aligned for me.
That is awesome. And so, on taking a more stance from the LGBTQ plus side of it, what was the reputation in the community of in that sense? Because SMU generally has a pretty conservative reputation. So what was? Did you get any sense of that when you came here to SMU?
Oh, yes. I definitely felt that sense, but I wasn't necessarily discouraged by it, because I identify as a moderate Republican, and so I felt, at least in terms of my political views, there was some kind of space there for me, at least to be welcome, but also kind of a way for me to kind of advocate for LGBTQ initiatives or rights on campus, and have those conversations with classmates. One of the things that I did while here at SMU, in the daily campus, there was op-eds, and typically when there's kind of a topic of discussion, a lot of times I will see the Democratic response and the Republican response, and for some of those, it was all right, here's two Republicans from having opposing views on this particular topic, and me and my classmate Tucker was his name. We really got into it, and I think we we really like that, having that kind of challenge towards each other, like having a certain value system and then putting that to the test. I think because I grew up doing debate in high school, and I just loved having those kind of like conversations. I think that was one of the beautiful memories that I have. But unfortunately, Tucker's no longer with us. He died unexpectedly a couple years ago at a young age. But yeah, I just remember some of those beautiful memories that I had with classmates at SMU, and it's something that I wasn't discouraged by in terms of the LGBTQ climate, because I felt like, well, someone's got to have to activate change, and I'll just go in here, and it's not like there wasn't LGBTQ presence before I got there. So I felt like I could be someone that can help, push forward with that, just like we have right now with Bree, the SMU queer student senator, and the other amazing group of students who are continuing that work. And so I think that for people that want to enact that change, certainly it would be great if SMU was more known and more open for LGBTQ students, but I'm glad that there are students who, are willing to advocate for that change and for that culture and for that safe space here.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you just really saw it as an opportunity, taking that model of, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you really have to do that.
Awesome. And so whenever you first got to SMU, did you mentioned you had been here from 2010 to 2014?
That's
correct?
Right, yeah.
Awesome. And so did you live on campus? Did you have roommates? Tell me a little bit about what your first impressions were when you came to SMU as a student.
Yeah, so first impressions was like, oh gosh, this is like the hardest in terms of like academic rigor that I have come across. And so I'm like, all right, even though I thought like I had like my stuff together, like in high school, it's like, all right, now I really have to like focus. And it was a very good challenge. So that's a good first impression. That SMU is a great educational institution because of that academic rigor. And some of my best classes that I've had were some of the hardest ones. And so even though I may have gotten like a C plus or a B minus on the class, I got so much out of those particular classes because of that challenge. Coming to campus, at the time, first year students could, either live on campus or, if they're in the Dallas area, live back home. And at the time, this was when I was having a difficult relationship with my mother, accepting my sexuality. And so I decided, well, I would like to, come here to SMU and live on campus, so that way I can kind of, find myself, so to speak. And I didn't have any roommates until junior year. And so I didn't have that kind of conflict with roommates until then. This was a particular student who also identified as a Republican, and we didn't see eye to eye on several things. He was not accepting of gay people, and so there was a little bit of tension in terms of just us. He was fine. He didn't ever directly say anything derogatory or hostile, but he was very much cold. Like I would expect to have like a roommate's like, hey, how was your day? Yeah. It's like, oh, do you want to go to Mac's place or something? It's like, nope, just very cold. So in that sense, I guess it's fine. But that was like my first roommate experience. And also just like the typical things that roommates deal with, like, oh, you didn't like wash your clothes, it's starting to smell, or like you have like your oatmeal bowls like there that you haven't cleaned in a while, and so just kind of like those like typical like roommate situations, which I think was a pretty cool thing. I would say if if you have to decide like on whether to live on campus or back home, I think there's definitely a benefit to living on campus, even if you may run into these situations, because it helps you practice your interpersonal skills with someone you may not know or may have different value systems with, and that's also a great opportunity just to kind of see what these are kind of the things that come with life and being a little bit outside your comfort zone. I think that's one of the things that I take away from it, and I try to do that for any kind of situation where I find myself where it's less than ideal, is kind of looking at it glass half full and what can I take from that experience.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you were having a difficult relationship with your mother. So did you, at this time, did you try to stay in contact with your family when you first came to SMU? Or is it more removed at this point in your life?
Oh, I definitely did not follow up with family. I was like, I'm just in the SMU bubble doing my own thing. But at least I remember, at least weekly, maybe would like have like a 15-minute call, just see how things are going. And I think that separation was very helpful to my and my mom's relationship. Mm-hmm. It gave space, I think, for her to reflect on her response and what that response meant as a parent. I think that's the avenue by which she came to terms with it. Like the hostility that I got from her, I think she realized was no way for a parent to treat their child. Mm-hmm. And then me being on campus and getting involved with SMU's Spectrum and just meeting a lot of people. This was like the first time that I got to meet a lot of other LGBTQ students. There was a couple in high school, but it was a mixed bag of some of them were open, some of them were closeted. Still the case in some respects at SMU, but there was a lot more open LGBTQ students. And just having that camaraderie that I didn't have, and that this was the first type of camaraderie that I had for the first time in my life was exciting. And I'm like, wow, I found a community here. Of all places, I found a community here at SMU. And so that was amazing, and I'm still friends to this date with several of them. It's been what now? Some of these friends I've known for a decade now, and we go to lunch like every Friday, and we still hang out. And so, yeah, that's kind of cool, building those friendships here and maintaining them over time.
Awesome. Yeah, and so you kind of mentioned it, that you were involved with SMU Spectrum, and mm-hmm. Were there any other clubs or groups that you were a part of while you were at SMU?
Oh, yeah. I was part of a student senate, and I got appointed to be a student senator in my first year, and one of the things that we were tackling was having at the time we called it the Gender Identity and Sexual Orientation seat. And unfortunately that, did not pass during my time there, but it's something that I pursued over several years. And I also was part of the Finance Committee for Student Senate, and what I saw there was something like 95% of the student budget went to one single student organization, but we had like over 180 student organizations. And so I had a view of we should decentralize that funding. It shouldn't just go to one student organization. And so I wanted to have more of an equal playing field. And during that time, I worked with other student senators within the Finance Committee and also in Student Senate to basically have our budget be a little bit more equitable. And during that time is when we saw some of the, there was this, I won't say what the other student organization is, but there was that one student organization had, who always had like the most well-funded budget, and Spectrum came in second as the second highest funded budget during that time period. And that's where Spectrum was able to do a lot of different things, like send students, like charter a passenger bus to take them to a conference in the Midwest for LGBTQ college students and learn a lot what other students were doing in other campuses to advocate for themselves. It gave us resources to bring in educational speakers to come talk to us on any topic, from whether it's with gender identity or safe-sex practices, and it was great to see that happening, and it was a contribution that I feel very proud of. I think benefited students at the time, having all these resources come to Spectrum. And what I've seen is the history for the LGBT and Women's Center is, there's kind of a little bit of a fluctuation in terms of the staff who have been there, and then there being a transition period, and then also just kind of volatility in Spectrum being active for some years and not as active in others. And so that's what got me to be interested in rebooting the SMU Pride Alumni Board to have another institution for LGBTQ community at SMU that can hopefully be another institution that can be consistent. And by consistent, I mean consistent in its presence and consistent in its engagement of alumni to help, as students here on campus, or even if there's something with the LGBTQ Center and the Women in LGBTQ Center, like if there's like, hey, like we need funding, the administration's not doing much for us, then we can come as alumni and say, hey, what's going on here? And just kind of, be here as a resource, for the women the Women in LGBTQ Center or students who, just need us.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like whenever you decided to reboot the Pride Alumni Board, it was more of it seemed like there was a sense of holding the university accountable for the future, of making sure that these programs continue to be funded, so that way, students years from now will continue to have these same benefits.
Yes.
So that's awesome. And so, kind of on the flip side of that, were there any student organizations or groups that you felt like were off limits to you as a Latino person or a member of the LGBTQ community?
Well, that's the funny thing. I didn't feel that way at all. I've gone to several like college Republican meetings, and at the time there was a lot of moderate Republicans there, but while I was there, it kind of shifted a little bit more to the right. And so I felt like they decided to choose their own demographic. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. If that's the direction they want to go, then that's up to them. And so it's not that I felt like I couldn't come back or couldn't join. It's like, yeah, it's not for me, if they're going to go to the right. And I should say like the far right, not right as in general. Also, like I've been to several Chaz events, but I never really went to the meetings or got involved with their leadership, which is one of the missed opportunities that I kind of see looking back. I wish I would have been more involved with that part of my identity, but I just have repressed my own sexual identity for so long that I felt like I'm going to channel all my energy towards that and just be involved with, Spectrum on campus and advocate for LGBTQ initiatives on campus. But yeah, there's those are kind of generally the student experiences that I was involved with, but I wish I could have done more to be part of Chaz or just part of the conversation with being a Latino, especially a first-generation Latino.
Awesome. And so tell me, you mentioned a little bit, but what was your social life like here at SMU? You mentioned that you found some friends, sort of had a little camaraderie there. And so did you go out on the weekends? And so tell me a little about your social life.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, we typically whether it's having like lunches like with friends like during the week, in between classes, or going over to the neighborhood, on the weekends to just go dancing, was pretty fun. I remember instances where one of our friends had was able to get an apartment, an SMU apartment. We're like, whoa, that's so cool. And so we found ourselves hanging out over at his space, and sometimes we'll be like, hey, do you just want to make cheese sticks or something? It's like, well, I don't know how to make cheese sticks. Let's just go to the grocery store and get the ingredients, and we'll make cheese sticks at midnight or 1 in the morning, that kind of stuff. Playing, games, and that was fun. Doing all that kind of stuff. Which I think, that's the beauty about living on campus. You get to have those kind of moments of camaraderie and building those memories and those friendships. And so, that I would say my social life was, I think, typical of what a college student, would have.
Yeah. And so what was your most memorable experience while you were a student at SMU?
Most memorable. Oh gosh, that's kind of hard to pinpoint just one. But I would say meeting my current partner. We've been together for 11 years now. And I remember just the first time where I saw him come to one of the Spectrum meetings. And, we just couldn't keep our eyes off each other. I asked him out on a date. He said yes. And went over to the Angelica across on Mockingbird to watch the King's Speech. And it was, kind of the typical type of thing I would think. It's like we're sharing the popcorn and our hands are almost touching. It's like I'm too nervous to hold his hand. And we talked about it after the fact. It's like I wanted to hold your hand too. And I think we knew since then. And so now each anniversary, we see an Oscar-nominated film because that's our, a reminder of our first date. And so he's been a very caring person. I'm lucky to have met him all these years. And so I would say that's the most memorable for me.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And so let me just go down my list here. I already talked about that. So I don't think we fully hit on this one quite yet, but as a member of the LGBTQ community, how were you treated by other students and faculty as well? You mentioned your roommate, but what was sort of the general environment from the rest of the student body?
Oh yeah, it was interesting. There was certainly the group of students that I would expect that weren't as welcoming. At the time we had a referendum for the LGBTQ seat, and it failed because the majority of students said no to it. It was a shock to several people. It's like, whoa, I didn't realize there was such opposition. A lot of that opposition I saw coming from the fraternity and sorority community. Certainly that's not a descriptor for many who are part of a fraternity or sorority, but certainly we saw a clear coalition of people who just weren't accepting, or were just kind of mocking of why do we need an LGBTQ seat? A very in that sense, felt very dismissive.
If you don't mind me asking, what year was that?
This was, I think, the referendum we did either in sophomore or junior year, so it would have been 2012 or 2013, sometime around there.
So fairly recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't. That was
Yeah, I
like
mean, in terms
over
of-
a decade ago. I don't know if that's recent.
I forget. I forget it's 2022.
Yes.
It feels like it was yesterday.
Sure, but if that's recent, sure, I'll take it.
Okay.
But yeah, there was also like some people who were part of the LGBTQ community who kind of it was interesting. I felt like there was a little bit of like infighting in some sense, like when we were boycotting, Chick-fil-A because of their anti-LGBTQ policies. Some of those people within the community went to go to Chick-fil-A during our boycott, brought it up to the Women in LGBT Center, and we're just eating there, not being aware like, hey, this is a something that one, this does not show a unified front, and two, it caused some interpersonal disagreements with people within the center. And it's like, how could you be eating, that when we're trying to boycott, like, and some people are like, it's just chicken, and it tastes good. And so, there was definitely that kind of tension there. Also saw a little bit of a tension between the LGBTQ students who were part of Spectrum and those who are in Meadows. Some of that tension is like, it's like, I don't like Spectrum because they're too political, why are y'all like, making a fuss? It was more like a group of LGBTQ students who were apolitical or perhaps, may just have been tired of growing up with all of this conflict, that they just wanted to have a space where there wasn't that tension, which I totally understand. But there was those dynamics that were playing out. And I think it ultimately is just a reflection of what we see in the larger, public, just kind of these types of dynamics. And I think it was a great eye-opener to kind of what to expect after college. I think that was very interesting. But faculty, they were amazing. They just, they get it.
Yeah.
And so I would, whenever there's like, there was one professor who is gay. He's retired now. But yeah, I would like, go into his office and just like talk or vent or something. And, he was like I kind of see him like almost like a grandfather type figure. But yeah, the faculty are amazing.
That's awesome. And so you had mentioned the financial aid package that SMU had given you, but what were some other support resources, organizations, programs that helped you obtain your degree and succeed at SMU?
Oh, yes. Well, I mostly relied on just the financial needs-based grant from SMU and the federal grants and the state grants available. I didn't know about the Hispanic Alumni Scholarship until like after I graduated. And I was like, wait, what? We have a Hispanic alumni presence? What's this about? And so I joined, I think, about a year or two after I graduated. I've been serving on that board for 6 years now. This is my last year. I'm about to roll off here on May 31st, so at the end of the academic or the end of the SMU fiscal year. And during that time, I've been chair, not all those years, and basically was focused on raising money. And so I felt like there was a missed opportunity to focus on helping other Latino students while I was an undergrad. that I felt like, well, I can give back in this role, being an alumni. And luckily, we've been fortunate enough to, on average, award at least $5,000 to 4 different students. So it's like $5,000 each to each student. And the stories that I hear are very touching that, this helped ease that kind of economic stress that they had in terms of just like making ends meet to pay, whatever balance they had with the university. And that just, motivated me to keep serving in this kind of role. And each year we keep we keep beating our, goals from the prior year to where, we've awarded not just to 4, but 5 students. And now this year, we're thinking of awarding it to 10 students. And so that's been great to see. The level of engagement that our board has been able to capitalize on over the years to, one, raise awareness that there's this scholarship so we have more students applying to it, and 2, to let our alumni know, hey, there is this scholarship specific for Latino students. Help us out, because when you look at the statistics, of Latino students, like we see like college admission, like increasing, but to retain them, we get a lot of dropouts in junior year and senior year, and so our focus is provide that funding that they need, so that way we can also increase the number of Latinos who are not just going to college, but also graduating, because that's very important for us. Of course, there's more data that there's a lot of support needed for incoming students, and I think that's something that SMU does well in terms of recruitment of students and providing financial assistance, especially for first years and sophomores. But there could be more work done to support juniors or seniors, or even not even speaking graduate students who decide to come back. And so I kind of see that as a focus for me at the moment, is to kind of, what can I do within my own sphere of influence to help move the needle on some of these things at SMU.
Awesome. And so, kind of coming back to the flip side of that, was there anything that you think hindered your success at SMU? Anything that was sort of a barrier to you?
Let's see. Anything? I don't think there was anything that was necessarily a barrier for me at SMU to pursue some of the things that I have pursued. I think certainly like my academics, there was a balance between, focusing on your academics, your social life, or just like your personal health, like rest and all that self-care. I definitely put more on this social piece where anything outside of academics, my activism. So I focused a lot of time there. My grades, they're fine. They were okay. But I saw that definitely as a barrier where I felt like there was only a limited amount of time while here, and I have to prioritize some things. And so I felt like it wasn't necessarily a barrier, but it was something that I constantly had like an internal conflict with. Like, I see a need to advocate for these things, but also I'm here to get an education and get my degrees. So it was, I think if there's a barrier, probably was more self-imposed more than anything.
Okay. And so as you look back on your time at SMU as a student, how do you feel about your time here?
Oh, it was fun.
Generally.
Yeah. I look back at, my time at SMU very fondly. I'm still working here for the university. Can't seem to escape SMU, but that's quite all right. And so in many ways, I did not feel like I have, I didn't feel like I have left SMU. And so I feel lucky to still be part of it. And also the friends that I've made during that time period, I still, am seeing on a weekly basis to this day. None of them have moved out of the state or moved back home. So I've been very fortunate, to still have those friendships. So in many ways, I feel like I'm still living those years right now.
That's awesome. And so after you graduated SMU, what did you do? Did you you mentioned you're still here at SMU working?
Oh, yeah.
So what was kind of like the immediate step after graduation?
I did not know what was the immediate step after graduation. Yes, at the time, I was jumping around like temporary positions at SMU. Like right after graduation, I was like working for Residence Life for over the summer, and oh, God bless my boss, who I'm friends now with. He's like, okay, Harvey, like all I can get you is like 2 more months over the summer, but after that, you really have to find another job because I can't do anything else. I'm like, that's totally cool. That buys me some time. And then went over to another center within SMU. It was a relatively new one. It was a Center for Global Health Impact, and that one focused on cervical cancer solutions in Zambia, and was kind of interesting because although my role there was to be an assistant to the executive director, I got to be part of several meetings where there was a collaboration with the World Health Organization, the CDC Foundation, and the Ministry of Health in Zambia, and some other WHO partners who were like in Israel and other parts of the world. And just to be like there and just seeing the cool stuff happening, like I was like, wow, this is awesome. I did that for about a year until I eventually was recruited to work at the current center that I'm working on. There was a particular project for the Galapagos Islands. There's an education system there, and they were doing professional development training for teachers there, and that piqued my interest. And also, I know Spanish, so I can help navigate that and help with project management for that particular project, working in a similar capacity where we have our partners in Washington, D.C., who are providing the training, and then also the Ecuadorian Ministry of Education. And then having those meetings, because we had to meet and say, like, what are we doing? And so it kind of like was interesting. It was similar in some ways to that prior job, but also this one's like, wow, getting to do some of the cool things. And I did not expect to have those experiences. After graduating, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just kind of took it like day by day, opportunity by opportunity. It was very stressful, in some ways very stressful, more stressful than being in college. Because I'm like, while I'm in college, like I know there's going to be the next semester, and here are my classes for next semester. All right, you get done with that, and you know what's going to be done for next semester. But after graduating, I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea what's gonna happen. And so I've learned to let go, and that just kind of be okay with the path that's unfolding in life. The sooner that I accepted that, the more it brought peace to my life. And so far, that has worked out right now to where I am at a job where I love what I do. And, I don't know what's next in terms of my career path, but this piece that I've carved out around education research is something that I very much enjoy. And also, I have a little brother who's growing up through the school system and just learning about the ways that students learn, particularly a topic around social emotional learning. Academics is important, but also just kind of their emotional, social emotional health is very important. And so I see the field progressing in that way, and I'm just happy to be part of it, learn from it, because I can see how at some point in the future, thinking about, the family that I hope to start someday, knowing some of these things to hopefully, raise, kids. I always have like this idea of like growing up, like, well, my parents did the best they could. Like think about like, well, I'm gonna try my best and learn as much about um, like childhood development and how can I take those learnings to give a child an upbringing that was better than mine. So that's kind of like a personal a motivation for why I love what I do and keep doing it.
Yeah, and so how would you say things have changed at SMU between when you were a student and now that you're back working with the university? In general?
Yeah. Oh, I think SMU keeps improving and improving. I love President Turner. He is amazing. I've done the Civil Rights Pilgrimage and learned a little bit about his history while he was at Ole Miss. And then just him continuing his work here at SMU. I feel like we're very lucky to have President Turner. Also, he's really good at raising a lot of money to get a lot of resources for our university. And so I think it's been doing better. The student culture, I'm not as attuned to, but I see a lot more engagement from students, just standing from the outside looking in, that I did not see while I was here. There was some of that, but not to the level that I see right now. So that is very exciting. I think about how, as a collective in the university, just things are just progressing and are moving forward for the better. Because I think from each graduating class or each cohort of students, like I think that there is kind of almost a passing of the torch to the next class or the next cohort of students. And I think that's what's allowed it to keep progressing. And so I would say overall, SMU is doing better. There's more that could happen. Certainly, that's always the case, but I think it's still pretty good.
That's great. And so, kind of starting to wrap up here with the last few questions. If you could go back and tell your younger self, one thing, what would you say to them?
Oh, what would I tell myself?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And then I guess kind of a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah. I would probably say to myself, everything will work out. Because there is a lot of, I guess, self-imposed stress and just learning to let go. And by let go, I mean trust that, things will work out. The things that you're doing right now will open up opportunities later on. I think that would have given me more confidence, for sure. And I see the same thing in my sister, who's currently a student here at SMU. And it's like, it's going to be okay. It may seem like stressful right now, but that's one thing I would tell myself. And something that I wish I would have done differently is a lot of the activism that I did, I took a lot of that on my own and did not rely on a group of other colleagues to carry that work. And, I think that's the reason why I wish that was different is because I see how that's working out very beautifully right now with what Bree and others have done, that there is not just one person doing this work. There is a team, a group of students doing it. And that is so awesome. It builds camaraderie. It also, like the things that y'all are doing, like also is like modeling some of those professional skills that one would use, outside of college. And so I think it's a very good thing. One, just a good cause to do on campus, but also some great experiences that can be useful for after you graduate. Like I wouldn't discount those things. Like, I think about some of those things like, oh, is this like resume material? It certainly is. You get a lot from those things that you're doing. That's the great thing about liberal arts education. And so, yeah, that's what I would have changed. And glad that SMU is there's this dynamic that's very beautiful happening here on campus.
And so kind of last question is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you think we should or that you want to talk about?
I think you hit pretty much, like all of it. I can't think of anything that y'all didn't hit that I'm thinking that I want to share out. But I'm very happy that, for your time. It's very awesome to get to know you just a little bit. Even though the focus is on me, I'm like, I like to know a little bit more about you too. And just having this, Voices of SMU program, I think it's something that's very great to capture these stories. And so I'm glad that this even exists. And so just my appreciation to you and the team who work on this.
Thank you, Harvey, and I definitely can share that feeling too, because I think what especially struck me during your interview was when you mentioned the referendum that failed. Because I think our perception of time is different, but to me 2012, 2013 is not very long ago.
Oh yeah.
And to think that something like that, even if it's just a seat of representation,
right,
that failed in the 2010s is to me shocking. And
right.
So
yes.
And so I think that's kind of why, like you mentioned, these oral histories are so important.
Right.
Because that may have been lost to history.
Right.
If nobody talked about it. So.
Oh yeah.
But thank you for your time, Harvey.
No, yeah.
I've really enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Brett.